Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second of our Points of View speaker series, NBS Past, Present, and Future. And I have been fortunate enough to meet nearly all of you, but for those of you who I haven't met, it is my extraordinary good fortune to be the Artistic Director of Canada's National Ballet School. And Dr. Fisher-Stitt, who I've known as Norma Sue since we were both youth, and I were saying that as this speaker series was being conceived in the summer, and I called Norma Sue in August, March the 7th seemed forever away. But here we are, it's March the 7th, and what an extraordinary week it's been for dance in Toronto. When you think of the Kirov being here, and it was the 25th anniversary of Eric Brunn's death, which was acknowledged as we celebrated the Eric Brunn competition, and Dance Collection Dance 25th anniversary, and they had their celebration on Saturday night. So somehow with all of those pieces, it feels the perfect time to be talking about NBS, past, present, and future. Norma Sue was a magnificent friend and peer to have in the school, and when we were colleagues in the National Ballet of Canada together. It was no surprise to me at all that Norma Sue was known as the thinking dancer. She was as intellectually gifted as she was impassioned about being a performer. So Norma Sue, when you decided to redirect your career and study at York University and get your BA and MFA, again, that was no surprise at all. And it was also not a surprise when you made the decision to go to Temple University in Philadelphia and got your doctorate. I think that if you had asked me over the past many years who my first choice would be to write a book about NBS, it was and always Norma Sue, because of her intelligence, her integrity, her love of the school. And I also knew that she would get it done, because you're living proof of the fact that if you want something difficult done, ask a busy person. It's the same reason that I have celebrated that Tess McLean and Norma Sue Fisher-Stitt have been the co-chairs of our alumni committee for every anniversary since the 30th anniversary. And I thought tonight would be a great time to ask them if they would do the Jubilee 60th. Just as part of my introductory talk. Well, there are a few witnesses here. But Norma Sue, your book is magnificent. And Dr. Fisher-Stitt is going to speak about NBS past into the present. And then I will talk about the present and have a look at the future, and that's our goal, to save 15 or 20 minutes at the end for questions. So it is a great honor to hand the microphone to you.
Thank you so much, Mavis, and welcome everyone, and thank you for coming tonight. I do have a PowerPoint presentation. I will try to remember to forward it, because sometimes I get involved in when I'm speaking. And it's always a little bit of a trick to figure out what is it that people really want to know about when you speak about a history of any institution. So I'm going to go through a little bit with explaining to you my process, and also how I came upon the organizational structure that I arrived at for the book, and then I'll talk about some of the chapters, and specifically probably more of the earlier than the later. Pardon me. Only because I think it's the earlier years that probably people are not quite as familiar with. And also, I just want to acknowledge that this beautiful image is the same image that's on the front of the book. And it's a lovely image of Elena Lotsanova, who was a student at the school and is now in the company. And it's, I think, just an exquisite photo done by Doug Aucoin here. So the title of my book is The Ballet Class, A History of Canada's National Ballet School, 1959 to 2009. And I'll explain to you a little bit why it's called The Ballet Class, but I want to speak specifically about why I wanted it to be a history. It is not the history. And I think that's because as an historian, it's really important, I think, for all of us to remember that there are multiple histories of anybody's life and of any institution. And when you are a researcher or a writer, and even if you're just a student and you're writing a paper for a history project at school, I think it's really important that we understand that as a researcher, as a writer, as a scholar, we all make decisions about what to put in and what not to put in. And it's impossible to tell a complete history. And one of my concerns was that after the book was out, I'd have people coming up to me saying, well, why didn't you talk about this? Or you didn't mention this person. And you know, it really is a very, very difficult proposition. So what I tried to do was pull out the threads that I thought would tell the story of the school in a manner that would, I hope, be interesting and informative. And there are some personal little stories in there, but it's not a tell-all book. It's not scandal-filled or anything like that. Mm-hmm. I wanted it to be a book that anybody would be able to read and find interesting. But because I teach at a university, I also wanted to write a book that other historians or students would be able to go to it and refer to it and know where it was that I found that piece of information, which is why there's quite a lot of notes in the back. So that was really my starting point. I was very, very fortunate because, as Mavis mentioned, I was a student here at NBS. I was both a day student and a student in residence. In grade 11, I moved into residence. And then I'd gone into the company before going on to pursuing my academic career. But because I had been here at the school and because I knew a lot of the teachers and I was familiar with what it was like to be a student at Canada's National Ballet School, I was really in a position of privilege in some respects. And as a researcher, you have to have access to materials. And I was very, very blessed because when I first asked Mavis, would she be interested in having me write a book about the school, I knew that I was really going to be reliant on Mavis and the other teachers at the school being open to me interviewing them, having access to some written materials, and also for me to know that I wasn't going to be pressured in any way to talk about this or not talk about that. And I have to say that Mavis and everyone here at the school was absolutely magnificent. I had no restrictions placed on me at any time, and I love the school. I have tremendous respect for the teachers here, for Mavis, and for the school's history, and so I wanted it to be an account that I felt would be honest and yet really bring out all the wonderful aspects of the school that I think are important. So I had access to the information, and part of that I think as well is when you're an insider, you have the trust of people. Mavis obviously knows me and felt that she could trust me with the material. But as well, I know a lot of the teachers, and so I think as well when I said to them, can I interview you? Are you willing to have me speak to you about your experiences as a teacher, or your experiences of when you were a student? Or when I went out and interviewed Celia Franca, Betty Oliphant, Bob Sermon, you know, because they knew me, I think it was easier for them to also be fairly open about their experiences. And to be frank, there were times when people would say to me, I don't really want this to be part of anything in print, but I'm willing to tell you about it anyway, just sort of as a backstory. And obviously, I respected that. It took much longer than I had envisioned to write this book. I think Mavis and I first spoke about the year 2000. Might have even been 1999, but I don't want to take it too far back. And she gave her blessing, so to speak. But there were lots of things that intervened, and a lot of it was my own position at York University. I went into some administrative posts, and so I didn't have a lot of spare time to write. I did take a sabbatical in 2004-05, and that's actually when 13 of the 15 chapters got written. But then I kind of got bogged down in 2005-06 and went back into my administrative responsibilities in teaching. And one of the problems with historical research, unless you're dealing with somebody who's long dead, is that time doesn't stop. And so, you know, originally I thought, well, I'll finish with the opening of the Celia Franca Center on Jarvis Street. And then, of course, that you know, came and went. And I thought, oh, geez, well, you know, now, well, I'll finish when they redo Maitland Street, with the renovations of Maitland Street. And then that kind of, you know, happened. And then finally, when I knew it was going to be the 50th anniversary in 2009-10, I said to Mavis, and to myself, probably most importantly, this is it. It has to absolutely get finished and published for the school's 50th anniversary. And fortunately, I was able to meet that deadline. But it's a tricky business, writing a history.